The Wolf's Bride, a werewolf shifter romance audiobook. In a world where the elite wield power and secrets like weapons, Paula Arbor, a quiet seamstress, is thrust into a world she barely understands when she is claimed as the contract bride of Lucien Wolfe, the enigmatic CEO of Wolfe Enterprises. Lucien is no ordinary man. He hides a feral, dangerous secret. He's a powerful alpha werewolf, bound by ancient laws to take a mate. Callus struggles to navigate the ruthless world Lucien inhabits, where alliances are fragile, betrayals are commonplace, and danger lurks in the shadows. Yet beneath his cold exterior lies an undeniable primal core that ties their fates together. As Lucien's dark obsession with her grows, Paula discovers the terrifying truth about his empire. Caught between fear and desire, Paula must decide if she will tame the wolf or risk being devoured by it. In a world where love is a weapon and trust is a gamble, will Paula find the courage to fight for her freedom, or surrender to the mate who would claim her completely? Chapter 1: The Sewing Machine Word. Its steady rhythm, filling the cramped workshop with a hum that matched the monotony of Paula's life. She sat hunched over the latest project, disastrous chiffon gown that seemed to resist every attempt to tame its unruly fabric. Beads of sweat clouded her brow as she muttered under her breath, "Come on, you wretched thing, work with me here." Paula tugged at a puckering seam, only for the thread to snap with an audible ping. "Oh," she groaned, flinging the broken thread aside and glancing at the clock. 10:30. The dress was due by noon. Of course she would come back to hunt her. As if summoned by callous thoughts, the workshop door slammed open, and a sharp nasal voice pierced the air. "Miss Arbor, tell me my gown is ready, or so help me." Victorial Enix, the city's reigning socialite and self-opinionated goddess of fashion, stormed in like a hurricane in 6-inch heels. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair bounced as she stopped short, her eyes narrowing at the mess of fabric sprawled on Paula's work table. Paula straightened, swallowing the lump of panic rising in her throat. "Good morning, Miss Lennox." "Hey, was just don't you good morning me," Victoria snapped, her manicured finger jabbing toward the unfinished dress. "That rag is supposed to be my showstopper tonight." "What is this? A charity case for seamstresses who hate fabric?" Paula resisted the urge to rub her temples. "The chiffon, I don't care about the chiffon," Victoria interrupted, her voice rising to a pitch that made Paula's eardrums wince. "Fix it now." Behind Victoria, Paula caught sight of Marta, her employer, standing in the doorway with arms crossed. The stern lines of her face deepened. As she surveyed the scene, Paula's heart sank. "Miss Lennox," Marta said smoothly, stepping forward with the grace of someone who thrived on diffusing disasters. "You know Paula's work is impeccable. She'll have it done in no time, won't you, Paula?" "Yes," Paula replied, her voice faltering. "As pick-up girl," Marta snapped, her smile tight as she turned back to Victoria. "We'll have the gown ready in 2 hours. Or I'll see to it personally." Paula swallowed the sting of the reprimand, nodding stiffly. 2 hours. Victoria sniffed, flicking her hair over her shoulder. "Good. I'll be back. And it better not look like something off the clearance rack this time." With that, she pivoted on her heels and strutted out, her exit as dramatic as her entrance. Marta lingered, her cold gaze fixed on Paula. "I told you to keep the clients happy. Do I need to remind you that Lennox money keeps the shop afloat?" "No, Marta," Paula said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Could then act like it." Marta spun on her heel and left, a door swinging shut behind her. As silence settled over the room, Paula let out a long breath, slumping back into her chair. The chiffon gown stared back at her mockingly, its jagged seams a testament to the chaos of her morning. "Maybe I should have been a baker," she muttered, pulling out a fresh spool of thread. Cupcakes don't yell at you. The workshop was a small, suffocating space, tucked between a bakery and a pawn shop. In the city's lower district, a faint aroma of fresh bread wafted in through the open window, mingling with the ever-present scent of fabric, dye and machine oil. Hala had lived and worked in this part of the city her entire life, her world confined to its narrow streets and flickering neon signs. She glanced at the sewing machine, its scuffed surface reflecting the dim overhead light. Her father had bought it for her when she was 17, back when she still believed she could turn her designs into something more than custom orders for spoiled elites. Now at 24, her dreams of creating her own fashion line were buried beneath deadlines, demanding clients. The bell above the workshop door jingled, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned expecting Victoria's wrathful return. It was met with a much gentler, "Crowley, you look like you could use a coffee," Astra said, holding up to steaming cups. Her friend's bright smile was a welcome break from the storm clouds that had dominated the morning. "You're a lifesaver." Kala abandoned the gown and reached for the cup. "Rough day," Astra asked, settling into a chair by the window. "Is there any other kind?" Paula blew on her coffee, savoring the warmth. Victorial Enix happened. "So, you can imagine how that went." Astra grimaced. "Yikes. Did she bring her usual fire and brimstone routine?" With extra brimstone, Kala quipped, earning a laugh from Astra. "If I didn't need this job, he'd walk out and never look back." Astra finished raising her cup. "Here's to dreams we can't afford to chase." They clinked cups in mock celebration. Oh, the sentiment stung more than Kala cared to admit. "You know," Astra said after a sip, "you could still try. Go for your own line. Get out of here and start fresh." Kala shook her head. "It's not that simple. Rent bills, Marta breathing down my neck." "It's a nice thought, but I'm stuck here." "Stuck is just a state of mind." Astra countered her. "I'm teasing. You're better than this place, Kala. You just don't see it yet." The bell jingled again, cutting their conversation short. A young courier stepped in, holding a sleek, black envelope that looked as out of place in the workshop as a diamond in a mud puddle. "Kala Arbor," the courier asked. Kala exchanged a confused glance with Astra before raising her hand. "That's me." The courier crossed the room, handing her the envelope with a curt nod, before disappearing back into the bustling street. "What's that?" Astra asked, leaning closer. "I have no idea." Grala turned the envelope over, her fingers brushing the embossed logo on the back. "A wolf's head, elegant and predatory Wolf Enterprises." "Why would Wolf Enterprises be sending you something?" Astra's eyes widened. Kala hesitated, her pulse quickening as she slid her finger beneath the sealant and pulled out a crisp sheet of paper. The bold, minimalist font was as intimidating as the name at the bottom of the letter. She read aloud, "You are hereby summoned to a meeting at Wolf Enterprises headquarters. Tomorrow at Nina. Please bring this letter as proof of identification." Fast whistled low summons. "That sounds ominous." "No kidding." Hala reread the letter, her stomach twisting in knots. What could Wolf Enterprises want with her? "Maybe they're hiring," Astra suggested. "Big company like that probably needs a ton of custom tailoring. Or they're suing me," Ala muttered. Her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. "Don't be ridiculous. You've never even been near their ivory tower. Whatever it is, it could be a good thing." Hala folded the letter, tucking it back into the envelope. "I guess I'll find out tomorrow." The sewing machine whirred back to life. The tension in her chest remained. Whatever Wolf Enterprises wanted, one thing was certain. It was about to turn her life upside down. The city's skyline loomed in the distance, a jagged crown of glass and steel that always seemed just out of reach. Hella craned her neck to take it all in as she stepped off the bus, clutching the black envelope against her chest like a talisman. Wolfe Enterprises headquarters was impossible to miss. Its sleek, mirrored facade soared above the rest of the skyline, a monolith of power and wealth. That didn't belong to people like her. She glanced at her reflection in the building's glass doors. Her blouse, though neatly pressed, looked embarrassingly plain compared to the parade of tailored suits and designer dresses sweeping past her. Her modest skirt felt too short, her flats too scuffed. Great, she muttered under her breath, running a hand over her braid. And the walking before picture. A security guard opened the door, this stoic expression in moving as she hesitated. Miss Arbor, he asked. Yes, she replied, startled. Follow me. He didn't wait for confirmation, for turning on his heel and heading inside. Haima stepped into the building and her breath hitched. The lobby was a symphony of excess. Polished marble floors stretched endlessly, reflecting the opulent crystal chandeliers above. The air smelled faintly of leather and citrus, as if even the ambience had a designer label. She felt as though she'd wandered onto the set of a movie, where she was the painfully underdressed extra. With a swipe of his key card, one of the doors slid open silently, revealing a private elevator, glenned with gold trim and black leather panels. You're going to the top floor, he said. Good luck. Wait, what? Kala blurted, but the doors closed before she could get another word in. The elevator hummed softly as it ascended, and Kala's pulse raced with it. She glanced down at the letter in her hand, rereading the elegant script for the 100th time. Why me? She wasn't anyone important. She wasn't rich, powerful, or remotely connected to this world. The elevator dinged, breaking her spiraling thoughts. The door slid open to reveal a sprawling office. That could only belong to someone who controlled the fate of the universe, or at least the city. The view was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, casting streams of light onto a sleek, black desk that sat at the center of the room. Like a throne, the air was unnaturally still, punctuated only by the soft hum of hidden machinery. Callis stepped forward hesitantly, the sound of her flats tapping against the polished floor, echoing in the cavernous space. Miss Arbor. The voice sent a chill down her spine, deep, smooth, and commanding. It came from a figure standing by the window. He turned slowly, and for a moment Calla forgot how to breathe. Lucien Wolfe, he looked, as though he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, his tailored suit clinging to his broad shoulders. With surgical precision, dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and piercing blue eyes that seemed to cut through her like glass. But there was something else about him, an aura of power that made her feel simultaneously drawn to and terrified of him. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Lucien said, his lips curling into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Hella cleared her throat, fighting to find her voice. I wasn't exactly given much of a choice. The corners of his mouth twitched, as though her response had mildly amused him. Fair enough, please sit. He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. Callis sank into it, feeling the weight of his gaze on her. She couldn't tell if it was curiosity or something else, and it made her skin prickle. Do you know why you're here? Lucien asked, settling into his own chair, at the ease of someone who owned the world. No, she said honestly. The letter didn't exactly come with a lot of details. Lucien leaned back, steepening his fingers. We've been watching you for some time, Miss Arbor. Her stomach flipped. Watching me, why? You're talented, he said simply. Your work has caught the attention of people in my circle, and when I see potential, I don't let it go to waste. Kel blinked, caught between confusion and disbelief. I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. I am just a seamstress. Lucien's smile widened. and this time it carried a hint of something predatory. Or far more than that. The cryptic response sent a shiver down her spine. But before she could press further, Lucien stood abruptly. He crossed the room to a sleek side table, pouring himself a glass of water. "I believe in precision, Miss Arbor," he said, his tone casual yet deliberate. "In every thread, every seam, every detail. And I see that same precision in your work. It's rare and it's valuable." "Thank you," Calla said, though her voice wavered. Lucien returned to his desk, setting the glass down with an unsettling finality. "You're going to work for me." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. What she managed her voice higher than she'd intended. "I don't." "You will," he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "The terms will be generous. Far beyond anything you're accustomed to. But in return I require loyalty and discretion." Calla's heart raced as she tried to process what was happening. "I don't understand. Why now?" Lucien's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Because, Miss Arbor, there's a storm coming, and you have a role to play in it, whether you're ready or not." Her room seemed to tilt as his words sank in. Kalke gripped the armrests of the chair, her pulse thundering in her ears. "I'll give you time to think it over," Lucien said, standing once more. "But not much. I'll expect your decision by the end of the week." Before she could respond, the doors behind her swung open, and the security guard from earlier stepped inside. "This way, Miss Arbor," he said. Calla rose on shaky legs, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. As she followed the guard out of the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she just stepped into a world far more dangerous and far more intriguing than she could have ever imagined. The elevator doors closed, and Calla's reflection stared back at her. Wide-eyed and disheveled. "Loyalty and discretion," she muttered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the elevator. "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" Chapter 2. Calla clutched the black envelope in one hand, and the straps of her tote bag in the other, her knuckles white and as the taxi cruised down the bustling city streets. She couldn't help glancing at the letters embossed. Wolf emblem, as if it might leap out and bite her. "You sure you're not heading to a job interview at a Bond villain's lair?" Astra's voice crackled through Calla H's Bluetooth earpiece. "That's not a lot helping," Calla muttered, her heart thudding against her ribs. "Oh, come on, and what's the worst that could happen? They want you to sew matching evil uniforms for their nefarious empire." Astra chuckled, and Calla could almost hear smirking. "I wish it were that simple. This is Wolf Enterprises, Astra. The kind summoned." Astra repeated, drawing out the word hum. "Sounds ominous. Maybe they're vampires." Calla let out a groan. "And we not add supernatural conspiracies to the list of reasons I might throw up. Before I get there, fine, just breathe. And remember, if this guy gives off supervillain vibes, you call me. I'll stage a rescue with snacks and a crowbar." Calla laughed despite herself. "Thanks, Astra. I'll let you know how it goes." The taxi rolled to a stop in front of Wolf Enterprises. And Calla's breath hitched. The building towered above her, its mirrored surface reflecting the overcast sky. Like a portal to another dimension, she stepped out, feeling very much like she'd wandered into a forbidden kingdom, where mortals dared not tread. Inside, the air was cool and crisp, with the faintest hint of citrus and cedar. Calla blinked, momentarily distracted by the oddly soothing scent. The grandeur of the lobby hit her like a freight train. Polished marble floors, golden light fixtures, and a reception desk so long it could double as a runway. "Miss Arbor," a woman's voice called, cutting through her. Calla turned to see a statuesque brunette in a fitted blazer. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun, and her expression could curdle milk. "And Vivian, Mr. Wolfe's executive assistant. He's expecting you." Vivian's tone was clipped, her smile so brief it barely registered. "Right. Thanks," Calla said, clutching her bag like a shield. follow me. Vivian spun on her heel, her heels clicking against the floor like a metronome of doom. As they stepped into a private elevator, Callison ease grew. Vivian swiped her badge, and the elevator began its smooth ascent. The numbers ticked higher and higher. Had Callous' nerves sink lower with every passing second. Relax, Miss Arbor, Vivian said without looking at her. Mr. Wolfe is very particular about his guests, but I'm sure he wouldn't have summoned you if you weren't. Special. Hala echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Vivian's lips twitched. You'll see, the elevator dinged. Then the doors opened to reveal a sprawling office. That made Kala feel like she'd accidentally wandered into a billionaire's secret bunker. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in soft, natural light, and the sleek black desk at center was flanked by shelves lined with books. Art and what looked suspiciously like a pair of antique daggers. Mr. Wolfe will see you now, Vivian said, gesturing toward the desk. Calla's pulse quickened as she stepped forward, the soft carpet swallowing the sound of her footsteps. The tall figure emerged from the shadows near the window, and Calla froze. Lucien Wolfe. Her first thought was that he looked like trouble in a perfectly tailored suit, his dark hair framed, a face that could make a sculptor weep, and his piercing blue eyes were so intense, it seemed to cut straight through her. He moved with a kind of predatory grace that made her skin prickle, and yet he couldn't look away. Miss Arbor, he said, his voice slow and smooth like velvet laced with steel. Thank you for coming. Kala cleared her throat, forcing herself to speak. Well, it's not every day I get an invitation from one of the most powerful men in the city. Lucien's lips twitched, the faint smirk playing at the edges. I suppose it's not. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. Please sit. Kala hesitated for half a second before obeying. Her tote bag perched awkwardly on her lap. Lucien took his own seat, steepening his fingers as he studied her, with a gaze that was equal parts curious and assessing. You know why you're here, he asked, his tone unreadable. No, actually, Kala admitted. The letter was a little vague. Lucien leaned back in his chair, his smirk widening, just enough to make her feel like the mouse facing the cat. I prefer to keep things intriguing. Oh, that's one way to describe it, she said before she could stop herself. His chuckle was low, almost dangerous. I can see why you've caught my attention. Kala blinked, her cheeks heating. I caught your attention, why? Lucien tilted his head, his gaze never wavering. Let's just say, you're uniquely suited for a very important role I have in mind. The room seemed to shrink around her, the air growing thicker with every word he spoke. What kind of role? Something that will require your talents, he said, his tone as cryptic as ever. Calla's stomach twisted with unease. She couldn't decide if he was being deliberately mysterious, or if he just enjoyed watching her squirm. I think there's been a mistake, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm just a seamstress. Lucien leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers, an intensity that made her breath hitch. No, Miss Arbor, you're much more than that. You just don't know it yet. The words sent a shiver down her spine, 'cause she couldn't tell if it was fear or something else entirely. Before she could respond, Lucien opened a drawer and pulled out a sleek leather folder. This, he said, sliding it across the desk, is your contract. Hollis stared at the folder like it might explode. My contract, sign it, Lucien said, his voice soft but commanding. And everything will change. The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Calla's fingers twitched as she reached for the folder, her heart pounding in her ears. Change, she echoed, her voice barely audible. Lucien's smirk returned, sharpened, enigmatic. Yes, in ways you can't even imagine. Carla's fingers hesitated over the sleek leather folder. Her mind a chaotic swirl of questions, doubts and a mounting sense of unease. She wasn't one to be easily spooked. There was something about Lucien Wolfe. His presence, his words, the way he seemed to look through her, instead of at her, had set her nerves on edge. What exactly am I signing up for? She asked, forcing a steadiness into her voice that she didn't quite feel. Lucien leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable, though a flicker of amusement danced in his eyes. A partnership, Miss Arbor, one that would be mutually beneficial. Partnership, Kala repeated, arching an eyebrow. I think you have the wrong person. I'm not exactly into partnering with billionaires. Ligusi, Ben chuckled softly, the low sound that sent a shiver down her spine. That's what makes you perfect for this. You're untouched by the world I operate in. His choice of words was odd, almost intimate, and it made her stomach flip. Well, that's cryptic, she said, trying to mask her nerves with humor. You always hire people without telling them what they're actually supposed to do. Only when it's necessary, Lucien replied smoothly. You'll find the details outlined in the contract. I assure you it's nothing you're incapable of handling. Kala frowned, tapping her fingers against the edge of the desk. This was insane. Everything about this situation screamed run. But a stubborn part of her refused to back down. She wasn't going to let some overconfident CEO intimidate her into signing something without an explanation. Look, she said, leaning forward slightly. I don't know what kind of power trip you're on, but I'm not just going to scribble my name on some mysterious contract because you think I'm perfect for the job. I need details. Lucien's lips curved into a small smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. Fair enough. He rose from his chair, his movements fluid and deliberate, and strode to the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. Rawa watched as he stood there, a silhouette outlined by the city skyline. For a brief moment, the room felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Wolfe Enterprises deals in power, Lucien said, his voice carrying a strange resonance. Not just financial power, but influence, territory legged. He turned back to her, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. You're part of that legacy, Kala. Whether you realize it or not. Her heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? I'm just a seamstress. There's nothing special about me. You're wrong, Lucien said, his tone soft but unyielding. Your instincts, your precision, your resilience, they're all signs of something far greater, something. Hella stared at him, her pulse pounding in her ears. She didn't know whether to laugh, argue, or bolt for the elevator. You're making it sound like I'm some chosen one in a fantasy novel. Lucien tilted his head, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, perhaps not far off. Okay, she said, throwing up her hands. This is officially the weirdest job offer I've ever gotten. And I've had a customer ask me to sew matching outfits for her and her dog. Lucien chuckled again, but there was an edge to it this time. Something almost predatory. The air between them seemed to thrum, and Kala's ease deepened. Why don't you just tell me what you really want? She demanded, folding her arm. Lucien's expression shifted, his amusement giving way to something more serious. And he stepped closer, stopping just short of the desk, and Kala felt the weight of his presence. Like a tangible thing. I want to protect what's mine, he said, his voice low and charged. And whether you like it or not, Kala, you're part of that now. Her breath caught in her throat. The words were laced with an intensity that both terrified and fascinated her. You keep saying things like that, she said, her voice trembling, despite her efforts to keep it steady. Like you know something I don't. Lucien leaned forward, his hands resting on the desk, his gaze never wavering. I do. For a moment the silence between them was deafening. Kala's thoughts raced. Her instincts screaming at her. But Something about Lucien's presence, his confidence, his calm. The way he seemed so certain of her importance, kept her rooted in place. She broke the silence with a nervous laugh. Do you practice this? The whole mysterious billionaire with a secret routine. Because it's very convincing. Lucien's lips twitched into another faint smirk. I don't need to practice, Miss Arbor. And I think you know that. Cola's stomach flipped again, and she hated how easily he unsettled her. You know what, I think I need some time to. Before she could finish, Lucia reached across the desk and flipped open the folder, revealing the crisp pages of the contract inside. Time is a luxury we don't have, he said, his voice soft but firm. Breathe it. Knit, trust me when I say you won't regret it. She glanced at the contract, then back at him. You're really not big on details, are you? Lucien straightened, his gaze softening just enough to make her pulse quicken. Some things can't be explained, Kala. They can only be experienced. Kala stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her wanted to walk out and never look back. At another part, a quieter, more curious part, wondered if this was the kind of moment that changed. Everything fine, she said, finally, her voice sharper than she intended. If this turns out to be some elaborate prank, I'm coming back with a pair of scissors. Lucien's smirk returned, this time with a hint of satisfaction. I wouldn't expect anything less. Her hand hovered over the pen, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She glanced up at Lucien one last time, hoping for some shred of reassurance. But his expression remained unreadable. With a deep breath, Kala picked up the pen and signed her name. As the ink dried, Lucien's smirk widened. Welcome to Wolf Enterprises, Miss Abel. The words sent a shiver down her spine. And for the first time, she realized she might have just stepped into something far bigger and far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Chapter 3. The lock on Kala's apartment door stuck, as it always did, requiring an aggressive jiggle and a creative curse before it gave way. With a metallic groan, she stumbled inside, her legs unsteady, and her heart still racing. From the surreal meeting with Lucien Wolfe, dropping her bag onto the rickety kitchen table, she let out a long breath, as if the air had been trapped in her lungs. Since she left Wolf Enterprises, the black folder felt heavier than it should, as she placed it beside her bed, its sleek cover practically daring her to open it again. What the hell just happened? She muttered, drubbing her temples. Her apartment wasn't much, cramped, with pewing wallpaper and a perpetually leaky faucet, but it was hers, a sanctuary of sorts. Except now, even the dingy familiarity of the place couldn't shake the lingering effect of Lucien Wolfe's presence. She paced the room, her thoughts spiraling. This is insane. This can't be real. I'm not some chosen one or whatever he thinks I am. I'm just me, Kala, the seamstress, who can't even afford a decent coffee machine. Her eyes darted to the contract again. The terms Lucien had mentioned echoed in her mind. Generous barely scratched the surface. A paycheck like that could salvo out of credit she wouldn't have to deal with Marta's constant condescension, or scramble to make rent each month. She could finally breathe. But there was something else too. Something about Lucien's gaze. The way his words wrapped around her, like a promise and a warning, sent a shiver through her. And no amount of money could erase the feeling that she was walking into a lion's den. Her phone buzzed on the counter, snapping her out of her thoughts. Astra's name lit up the screen. Perfect timing, Kala muttered, swiping to answer. Okay, Bill Asford demanded without preamble. What happened? Is he a vampire secret alien overlord? Did he ask you to join a cult? Kala laughed despite herself, the sound shaking not quite, but it's close. I don't even know how to explain it, Astra. He offered me a job. Or something, a partnership, he called it. Partnership with Wolf Enterprises. Astra's voice climbed an octave. Kala, are you serious? That place is like a fortress for the one of the one. What does he want with you? That's the thing, Kala said, slumping into the lumpy couch. He wouldn't say. He just kept talking in riddles about how I'm perfect for the role. Like he knows something I don't. Astra groaned. All men and their cryptic power moves. Did he at least explain what this role is? Not really. He gave me a contract, said to think it over. Kala glanced at the black folder, its polished surface gleaming under the dim light. But, Astra asked, he's not normal. There's something about him, something. She searched for the right word. Intense, like he's dangerous, but also. Astra offered. Paula rolled her eyes, though her cheeks warmed. That's not the point. Hush, you're okay. So, Mr. Dark and Mysterious wants you to join his empire. Kala. The scream. Ray. No, Kala said softly, biting her lip. Astra's tone softened. Look, I get it. You're overwhelmed. And it sounds like the paycheck could be life-changing. But if it feels wrong, trust your gut. There's no amount of money worth getting wrapped up in. Something shady. Kala sighed, the weight of Astra's words settling over her. She wanted to believe it was that simple, but the thought of returning to the suffocating grind of her current life made her chest tighten. Just promise me you'll be careful, Astra added. And don't sign anything until we've dissected it. The magnifying glass and a lawyer. Kala managed a weak laugh deal. After they hung up, the apartment felt quieter, heavier. Kala's gaze drifted to the contract again. Her fingers twitching with the urge to open it. She needed clarity, something to make sense of the chaos swirling in her mind. Instead, she grabbed a blanket and draped herself in it, sinking into the couch, as if it could shield her from the world. But even as she closed her eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucien Wolfe's shadow was still looming over her. Meanwhile, Lucien stood on the balcony of his penthouse, his gaze fixed on the city lights sprawling below. From up here, everything seemed so small, so distant. Yet, his thoughts were anything but detached. She's intriguing, he murmured, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Dangerously so, a voice said from behind him. Rowan stepped into the dim light of the balcony, his expression unreadable as usual. You sure about this, Lucien? Bringing someone like her into the fold, it's a risk. Every move worth making is a risk, Lucien replied, his tone calm but firm. She's different, Rowan. You saw it too, didn't you? Rowan cracked his arms, his amber eyes narrowing. What I saw. Someone who doesn't know what she's walking into. If you push too hard, she'll bolt. Lucien's smirk was slow, predatory. She won't. She's stronger than she realizes. And when the time comes, she'll choose the right path. His sound awfully confident for someone who's betting on a human. Rowan said, his tone dry. Lucien's gaze darkened. A flicker of something primal surfacing in his expression. She's not just human. Rowan arched an eyebrow but didn't press further. He knew better than to challenge Lucien when his mind was set. Instead, he shifted the topic. The pack's restless. They're not going to like this. They'll adapt, Lucien said, simply turning back to the skyline. Kala is essential. They'll understand soon enough. Rowan's silence lingered, like a warning. Lucien ignored it. His focus was elsewhere, fixed on the thread of fate that had brought Kala into his orbit. She had no idea what she was stepping into, but Lucien did, and he wouldn't let her slip away, not now. Not ever. The next morning, Alice sat at her kitchen table, staring down the black folder, as if it might suddenly open and start dictating her future. The remnants of her hastily scarfed toast sat on the plate next to her, abandoned in favor of pacing the room. The events of the day before felt like a dream. Or a nightmare, depending on which minute she thought about it. The contract was still unopened, and she'd barely slept, her mind spinning with all the reasons to say no, and a few terrifying reasons to say yes. Her phone buzzed, breaking the quiet. She snatched it up, hoping for another pep talk from Estra. But her stomach dropped when she saw the name on the screen. Marta. Great, she muttered before reluctantly answering. Hello, Arbor. Marta snapped, her tone sharper than usual. I need you in the shop today. The Lennox order is a disaster, and we can't afford another mistake with her. Understand? Kala pinched the bridge of her nose. I thought Victoria was happy with the last. She's not, Marta interrupted. And if we lose her as a client, don't bother coming back tomorrow. Kala's stomach churned. I'll be there, she said, her voice flat. Marta hung up without another word, and Kala dropped the phone onto the table. Her financial reality came crashing down like a tidal wave. Rent was due in a week. Her savings account was practically empty, and now her job hung by a thread, literally. She glanced at the black folder again, its sleek surface practically gleaming with temptation. What if it's not as bad as it seems? She murmured to herself. Before she could spiral further, a knock at the door startled her. Ella froze. No one knocked on her door, especially not before noon. She tiptoed to the peephole, her heart racing. Through the tiny glass circle, she saw a man in a crisp gray suit holding a package. Miss Arbor, the man called, his tone professional, but loud enough to make her flinch. A delivery from Wolfe Enterprises. Her mouth fell open. Of course, because this situation was bizarre enough already. After a moment of internal debate, she unlocked the door and opened it, just enough to peek out. A man handed her a black box, tied with a silver ribbon, nodded politely, and walked away without waiting for a signature. Okay, that's not ominous, she muttered, carrying the box back to the kitchen. She set it on the table and untied the ribbon, her hands trembling slightly. Inside, nestled in black tissue paper, was a sleek laptop with the Wolfe Enterprises logo embossed on its lid. Kala blinked. What the hell? Beneath the laptop was a note, written in the same elegant handwriting as the letter. Consider this a tool for the journey ahead. A choice is still yours, but time is fleeting. Hey. Tilde Lucien Wolfe. Kala slumped into the chair, staring at the note. The words felt heavy, like they carried more meaning than they should. Oh, for crying out loud, she muttered, tossing the note aside. Who is this guy? Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Aska. Did you make a decision yet? If not, I'm coming over with donuts, and a list of reasons why this is probably a bad idea. Kala, I wish I had answers. He sent me a laptop. A laptop? Who does that? Estro, rich, controlling man with questionable notice. How me there wasn't a contract in there too. Kala stared at the unopened contract on her table. Kala, there is. I haven't signed it. Estraga, don't. I'm serious, Kala. This guy could have a dozen hidden agendas, and you wouldn't know until it's too late. Kala sighed, setting the phone down. Pastra wasn't wrong, but with each passing minute the pressure mounted. Between Marta's threats, her dwindling bank account, and Lucien's unrelenting presence, she felt like the walls were closing in. She stood abruptly, grabbed the black folder and shoved it into her note. Enough, she said aloud, more to herself than anyone else. I need answers. Meanwhile, Lucien stood in his office, gazing at the skyline, with his hands clasped behind his back. His phone buzzed on the desk, and without turning, he answered it. Report, he said curtly. She received the delivery. Vivian's voice replied on the other end. But she hasn't signed yet. Lucien's lips curved into a faint smirk. She's stubborn. Good, are you sure this is the right approach? Vivian asked, a note of hesitation in her voice. If she feels cornered, she might, she won't. Lucien interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Kala isn't like the others. She needs to choose, yes, but she also needs to understand the stakes. She's not running from this. Vivian was silent for a moment before responding. And if she does, Lucien's expression darkened, his eyes glinting with a predatory edge. And she'll leave me no choice. Calla burst through the doors of Wolfe Enterprises. Later, that afternoon, her oat bag slung over one shoulder in determination, burning in her chest. The receptionist blinked in surprise as Calla marched to the desk. I need to see Lucien Wolfe, she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Do you have an appointment? The receptionist asked, her unpolite but skeptical. No, but he's expecting me, Calla replied. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. Moments later, she gestured toward the private elevator. Calla stepped inside, the doors closing around her like the jaws of a trap. Her reflection stared back at her. Wide-eyed but resolute. When the elevator doors slid open, Lucien was waiting, his posture relaxed, but his gaze sharp. Monsieur Barber, he said, his voice smooth as ever. But what do I owe the pleasure? Calla stepped forward, dropping her bag onto his desk with a thud. We need to talk. Lucien arched an eyebrow, clearly amused. About this, she said, pulling out the contract. A job, the cryptic messages, the laptop. Whatever game you're playing, I'm not interested. Lucien's smirk widened, and the air in the room seemed to shift, growing heavier. He stepped closer, his movements unhurried but deliberate. Miss Arbor, he said softly, his gaze locking onto hers. I don't think you understand, this isn't a game. Then whether you like it or not, you don't have a choice anymore. The weight of his words settled over her, and for the first time, Calla realized just how deep she was in. Chapter 4. The room felt smaller than it should have, despite its sprawling windows and ceilings. Hat soared toward the heavens. Calla's heartbeat, woo, echoed in her ears as she stared at Lucien, his piercing, blue eyes fixed on her with unsettling calm. Excuse me, she said, her voice higher than she intended. Lucien's smirk deepened, the sharpness of it making her insides twist. I said the contract isn't just a job offer, Miss Arbor. It's a commitment, a binding one. Binding. Her laugh was sharp, brittle. What, like a blood pact? I hope you're joking, because I didn't exactly bring a sacrificial goat to this meeting. His expression didn't waver. If anything, it softened, which somehow made it worse. No blood required, just your signature. The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Calla glanced at the contract, still spread out on his desk. A neatly typed paragraph, suddenly looking like lines in a trap. Okay, she said slowly, trying to keep her voice from shaking. This isn't funny anymore. If this is some weird power move to scare me into taking the job, congratulations. You win. I'm terrified. I'm also leaving. She turned toward the door, but Lucien's voice stopped her cold. You won't get far. There was no malice in his tone, just quiet certainty. And that somehow made it worse. She spun back around to face him. Excuse me, Lucy, and stepped closer. His movements unhurried but deliberate, like a predator closing in on prey. The air seemed to shift around him, heavy with something Calla couldn't name. This isn't just about a job, he said, his voice low and steady. It's about protection, stability, power. I can give you all of that, Calla. Only if you're willing to trust me. Trust you, she said, her voice right. I don't even know you. Lucien tilted his head, studying her with a gaze that felt far too intimate. Not yet, but you will. Her stomach churned, a mix of fear and frustration bubbling to the surface. You keep saying things like that. Like you already know how this ends? Well, news flash, Mr. Wolfe, I don't. And right now, it's looking a lot like I'm walking into a bad episode of Dateline. He chuckled softly, the sound rumbling in his chest. You're sharper than I expected. Good, you'll need that. For what she demanded. Throwing her hands up, Lucien's smile faded, replaced by something darker, more serious. He took another step forward. Then, Kala instinctively backed up until she hit the edge of the desk. For survival, he said simply. Kala stared at him, her mind racing. You're insane, she said, though her voice wavered. Lucien didn't flinch. Instead, he placed a hand on the contract, his long fingers tapping the edge. Do you think this is a choice? But it's not. It never was. The calm finality in his tone sent a chill down her spine. That's not how this works. You don't just decide someone's life for them. Lucien's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make her uneasy. You'd be surprised how much I've already decided. Stop talking in riddles and just tell me what you want. She snapped. Lucien's gaze softened. Oh, the intensity behind it never wavered. I want you to be safe, to be protected, and to do. But you need to be here with me. Her laugh came out bitter and shaky. Oh, is that all? You just want to keep me in your shiny ivory tower for my own good. Please. Lucien leaned forward, his proximity making her heart race, for all the wrong reasons. You are in danger, Kala. Whether you believe me, there are people who would use you, harm you for what you are. I am, she repeated, her voice cracking. He straightened, his expression unreadable. There's more to you than you know. But you'll learn in time. She stared at him, her mind spinning. This is insane. I should call the cops or a therapist or both. Lucien's smirk returned sharper this time. And tell them what? That a billionaire wants to keep you safe. I'm sure that'll go over well. She hated that he was right. She hated that part of her. Even a tiny stubborn part believed him. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucien stepped back, giving her just enough space to breathe. Because you're mine. Her stomach dropped. Excuse me, you don't see it yet, but you will, he said. His voice soft but unyielding. You're part of my world now, Kala. And I protect what's mine. Yours, she repeated, anger flaring. I'm not a possession, Lucien. Of course not, he said, his smirk softening. That you are important to me. To this he gestured vaguely, as if the weight of his words were too big for the room. Kala's hands curled into fists. She wanted to scream, to argue, to fight, but every word he spoke felt like a door slamming shut, leading her with nowhere to run. A sharp knock at the door broke the tension. Enter. Lucien called, his voice calm again. The door opened and a man stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, with amber eyes that practically glowed in the dim light. Kala blinked, startled by how effortlessly intimidating he was. Rowan, Lucien said, inclining his head. Good timing, the man. Rowan gave a curt nod before turning his gaze to Kala. His expression was neutral, but something about the way he looked at her felt curious, like she was a puzzle he hadn't figured out yet. Is her? He asked, his voice low and gravelly. Kala bristled. I have a name, you know. Rowan arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. Feisty, interesting choice, Lucien. Lucien smirked. I thought so. Kala's patience snapped. Okay, enough with the cryptic stares and the vague threats. If you want me to sign this ridiculous contract, you're going to tell me everything. Right now. Rowan exchanged a glance with Lucien, who nodded slightly. Fine, Lucien said, his tone shifting. But once you know, there's no going back. Kala crossed her arms. Try me. Lucien stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. You're not just a seamstress, Kala. You're part of something much bigger, something ancient. And whether you like it or not, your place is here. With me. Her breath hitched. Why? What makes me so special? Lucien hesitated just for a moment before answering. Because you're connected to this world in ways you don't yet understand. And because without you, I can't protect what matters most. The weight of his words pressed down on her, suffocating and undeniable. She wanted to argue, to scream, to tell him he was wrong, but the look in his eyes stopped her. And it wasn't just confidence. It was certainty. Lucien slid the contract toward her again, his voice soft but commanding. Knit, Kala, and let me keep you safe. Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to fight. do anything but give in. Somewhere deep down, a voice whispered that this wasn't just about her anymore. With a shaky breath, she signed her name. Lucien's smirk widened, but his gaze held something else. Satisfaction, yes, but also something darker. Welcome to my world, Miss Arbor, he said, his voice laced with promise. Kala set the pen down, her chest tightening as the reality of her decision sank in. Whatever she just agreed to, she knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. Chapter 5. Kala clutched her overnight bag like a lifeline. As the sleek black SUV glided through the wrap, iron gates of Lucien's estate. He had known he was rich, billionaire, remember. But nothing could have prepared her for this. The sprawling mansion looked like it had been plucked from the pages of Architectural Digest. All glass, stone, and modern elegance. Perfectly manicured gardens surrounded the property, complete with fountains. That seemed designed solely to make her feel tender-dressed in her clearance-jack jeans and scuffed sneakers. Wow, Kala muttered, her voice laced with on ease. Intimidating, isn't it? Lucien's deep voice cut through her thoughts, and she glanced at him. He sat beside her, his posture relaxed, but his sharp blue eyes were anything but. Understatement of the century, she quipped, though her voice wavered. Lucien's lips curved into that maddeningly enigmatic smirk. You'll get used to it. Doubtful, she muttered under her breath. But he heard her anyway. The faint chuckle that followed didn't help her nerves. The SUV rolled to a spot in front of the estate's grand entrance, where a small army of staff waited. Kala shrank into her seat as a tall man in a crisp suit opened her door. Miss Arbor, he said with a polite bow. Welcome, thanks, she said awkwardly, stepping out onto the stone driveway. Lucien exited on the other side, his commanding presence immediately drawing the staff's attention. With a single nod, he dismissed them, leaving only one man standing beside him, a striking figure with amber eyes and an expression so neutral it bordered on cold. This is Rowan, Lucien said, gesturing to the man. My second in command. Aye, she said, offering a small wave. Rowan didn't return it. Miss Arbor, he said, his deep voice cool and measured. Kala's ease deepened. Rowan was handsome in an intimidating way. Tall and broad-shouldered, with short, dark hair and a faint scar running across one eyebrow. He looked like someone who had seen things, and she wasn't sure she wanted to know what they were. Rowan will help you get settled, Lucien said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Kala blinked. Wait, what? You're not going to show me around yourself. I have business to attend to, Lucien said smoothly. Rowan is more than capable. Before she could protest, Lucien turned and strode toward the house, leaving her standing awkwardly beside Rowan. Great, she muttered. The inside of the estate was as overwhelming as the outside. High ceilings, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light made the place feel more like a gallery than a home. Every surface gleamed, every detail screamed luxury, and every step Kala took made her feel like an imposter. This way, Rowan said curtly, leading her up a grand staircase. Kala followed, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floors. So, do you guys get a lot of visitors? Or am I the lucky winner? Rowan didn't so much as glance back. You're the first. First, she repeated, her brow furrowing. You mean, Lucien doesn't usually bring people here. Rowan stopped at the top of the stairs, turning to face her. His amber eyes bored into hers, and she fought the urge to take a step back. Lucien doesn't trust easily, he said, his tone clipped. If you're here, it's for a reason. Go forget that. Well, thanks for the warm welcome, she shot back. So, her bravado felt thin under his piercing gaze. No one's expression didn't change, and he turned without another word. leading her down a long hallway.